Hello, my zebras and spoonies. Thanks for coming and hanging out with me today. I am glad that you are here. Today, I am going to be talking about receiving abortion care in America. I was attending a social event when a comment was made that Roe versus Wade being overturned doesn't affect very many people, and that those it does affect can just move to another state. In that moment, I think that my head exploded and I wasn't capable of giving any kind of intelligent reply. But my brain hasn't been able to let this go, so I am making these posts in hopes that it will help me process all the feelings that this comment triggered in me. And hopefully, it will also help elucidate why I feel that this is such an enormous issue. The first thing that I have to put on the table is that it doesn't matter how many or how few people are affected if the government is diminishing the rights of the people. It's a big deal. It is simply not ethical to consider it all right because it doesn't affect a large group of people or a group of people that you belong to. And the right to body autonomy is one that I personally feel is of particular importance, one that needs to be maintained for all people. However, it does in fact affect a large group of people. Currently, about 51.1% of the American population has a uterus. If you want to argue that only those individuals that can become pregnant are being impacted, all right, then let's look at those numbers. The youngest documented individual giving birth was 5 years old. Yes, 5 years old. Go ahead and look it up. And the oldest individual giving birth was 67. Well, the oldest that became pregnant without the assistance of IVF. And that means that the majority of individuals have the potential to become pregnant based on that wide age range that could possibly carry a baby to term. However, the general age range that is considered to be most likely to become pregnant is 15 to 50 years old, even though it's pretty much anyone who has a uterus. At the end of 2021, the American population was 332915073. So that means that there were 170119602 individuals with a uterus. According to the U.S. Census Bureau's data, 61% of those individuals are within the age bracket of being likely to become pregnant, which is 103,77257 people. That's a low estimate, and it comes to about 1/3 of the American population. Yeah, third of the American population. So that's not a small group of people that is being impacted by this. Clearly, saying that the overturning of Roe versus Wade only affects a small group of people is simply inaccurate. And that's without getting into the larger picture issues that Roe versus Wade being overturned has now brought many other rights into the firing range. Since Roe versus Wade established the privacy laws, everything that is using that as a foundation is now subject to challenge. And that means medical autonomy and medical privacy, amongst many other laws, are up for debate and could be rights that the Supreme Court could decide to revoke. And I think it's fair to say that medical autonomy and medical privacy are at least two rights that affect everyone. I mean, those two rights being put in a position of risk is a matter that really affects every American. So this really isn't about a small group of people. Generally speaking, only about 5% of those with a uterus will experience difficulties becoming pregnant. Without birth control, 95% of individuals with a uterus will become pregnant within a year if they are sexually active on a regular basis. During each fertility window, an individual with a uterus has a 33% chance of becoming pregnant if they have sex just once. These are pretty high stake odds when you consider the current legal status of many states. There are 16 states that have made abortion illegal, or that soon will be. And it's relevant to note that those numbers of how likely a person with uterus is to become pregnant is based off of someone who is not using contraceptives. So adding to this is the fact that there is already discussion about revoking the protection for birth control, with IUDs and emergency contraceptive being at the center of this debate, because there are current abortion laws, with Mississippi one being one of them, that view these types of contraception as actually being types of abortion, which means that under those states' laws, there are already types of birth control that is illegal. So let's keep in mind that 95% of individuals with their uterus use some form of birth control during their lifetime, and this means that there will be no way to reliably prevent becoming pregnant beyond abstinence. But this is also a false promise for preventing pregnancy, because 25% of individuals with a uterus are raped by the time they are 40 years old. And many of those victims are repeatedly victimized over years. This makes abstinence something that 25% of individuals with a uterus have taken from them. Yeah. Another thing that people with the uterus have forcibly taken against their will. So there are 16 states that have made abortion illegal, but there are another 6 that might still decide to make abortion illegal. And there are states that the pre-Roe versus Wade abortion bans are making things murky at best, putting healthcare providers at considerable legal risk. Both these factors are likely to limit abortion availability even further. As it stands, there are 27 states that abortion is legal. This makes access a serious consideration. Every facility of every kind across the nation is currently struggling to meet the needs of the patients that they are currently receiving. So what happens when a facility suddenly starts getting twice as many patients? There aren't any more doctors or nurses or resources to add to help that facility out. These facilities simply aren't equipped to help all the individuals that might need an abortion and that have to seek out that abortion in a state because their state doesn't provide that service any longer. Anytime there is a question of access, there has also been a question of equity. When it is difficult to get care or services, those with more money are more likely to get it. This means that those of color and those who are disabled are going to be less likely to get the care that they need, because they are also the individuals that are less likely to be able to afford it. This is only going to create a further burden on these groups and create a larger inequity, as they are expected to care for children from pregnancies that they were not given access to terminate. Not to mention that these groups are also more likely to suffer from serious penalties if they have an illegal abortion. And how feasible is it actually to just go to another state for an abortion? So that depends on what your finances look like. If you are considering just going there for care and coming back, you are possibly still going to be facing criminal charges in your home state. Thus, going to another state for an abortion means going to that state to live. This means that the individual must give up all of their social connections and family ties in order to receive that care. They will most likely have to quit their job, which means that they will not have medical insurance when they arrive at the new state. Most employers do not have national lateral transfers as an option, and the ones that do will not likely do such a transfer in a timely fashion, thus making it really a non-option. Even if they work in a field of demand like nursing, they are not likely to get a job that the medical insurance begins coverage on day one of employment. That benefit usually starts somewhere around the 90-day mark. State insurance coverage will only be an option if you had it in a state you were leaving, and it often takes 30 to 60 days to process that application. Not having medical insurance means that many of these individuals will then have to choose between increasing their medical debt or having a child that they can't afford. If the individual has chronic illness, moving to another state is even more difficult, and doing so without insurance puts their health at greater risk. 60% of American adults have a chronic illness, with 42% of American adults having more than one chronic illness. 33% of individuals who are likely to become pregnant, that are as individuals aged 15 to 50 who have a uterus, are also an individual that has a chronic illness. For this group, making a quick move without making sure that a job, housing, and medical care has been arranged can mean a significant impact in their health and well-being. It can also mean increasing debt if there's any medical emergencies that arise. But it is much more complicated than that. In the United States, about 40% of school-aged children and adolescents have at least one chronic health condition. This makes it highly likely that even if an individual with a uterus does not have a chronic illness, either their partner or one of their children will have a chronic illness. 59% of individuals that get an abortion have had at least one previous full-term pregnancy, which means that over half of the individuals who receive an abortion are parents. This is not care that individuals with a uterus only seek out before they have established their families. By asking them to move to get this care, you are also asking them to disrupt their entire family for that care. This means putting any chronic illness management at risk. It is not ethical to force these parents to choose between ensuring that they get the care they need or ensuring that their child or partner gets to maintain their chronic illness management. Medical ethics demands that we ensure that a family can meet the medical needs of all of their family members. Then there is the simple issue of the affordability of moving. No one is going to be able to purchase a house on short notice. That's something that just simply takes time. Thus, someone moving to another state to get an abortion would be looking at apartments, at least for when they first move to the new state. But this is part of how equity comes into play and why being rich can make a big difference in getting the care that you need. In most areas, small one-bedroom apartments have a rent of at least $1,500, and most of these rents require both first and last month's rent up front. And they will also want a security deposit that is usually the same amount as 1 month's rent. So that means that just to move into a one-bedroom apartment, a person will need to have $4,500. That's not going to get them heat or electricity or water, just the building. And that's also not going to get their belongings from one state to the next. Even if you pack and transport your belongings yourself, there are costs associated with moving your entire household. So for the first month, with costs of moving and the utilities, you're looking at needing at least $5,000. That's quite a bit of money, especially given the current economic environment. So before an individual with uterus can get the care that they need, they will need to spend about $5,000, and they will likely be putting their chronic illness management or their loved one's chronic illness management at risk. Not to mention that they will need to socially isolate themselves by leaving their community and their extended family. Then they will need to go into debt to pay for the care that they need. This simply does not come close to meeting the standard for ethical and equitable healthcare. This could be considered completely unacceptable for any other medical procedure in this country. We wouldn't accept this for getting your gallbladder removed or having an appendectomy. So why would we begin to consider this acceptable for having an abortion? The last thing that I have to say about this matter is that it really doesn't matter if an individual with a uterus can get abortion somewhere in this country. Because I don't feel that Roe versus Wade being overturned is really about abortions. To me, Roe versus Wade has always been about having body autonomy or medical autonomy. That's the right to choose what happens to your body and ensuring that the government cannot force you to do anything with your body that you do not want to do, even when someone else's life is in danger. By overturning Roe versus Wade, the Supreme Court decided that I, as an individual with a uterus, do not have unconditional body autonomy. This means that the Supreme Court has decided that there are conditions in which the government can decide that I can be forced to put my own body at risk for the well-being of another person. That is a terrifying standard to set. And I believe that it leaves a very dangerous door left ajar. What else will they decide that they can force upon me and my uterus? Will they decide that they can extend it to things beyond my uterus, or even to people who don't have a uterus? If we look back through American history, we will find some very dark and evil things that are hiding in our closet. Forced sterilization, right along with forced pregnancies, is very much a part of American history. Also, that the government could decide which kinds of people were coming into their country. Eugenics is very much a part of our history. There were numerous government-funded programs that took control of individuals through their uterus. Society accepted the notion that modern societies, as a matter of policy, should promote the improvement of the human race through various forms of governmental intervention. What is often not appreciated is that Nazi efforts were bolstered by the published works of the American eugenics movement as the intellectual underpinnings for its social policies. One of Hitler's first acts after gaining control of the German government was the passage of the law of the Prevention of Hereditary Diseased Offspring in July of 1933. The Nazis, when proposing their own sterilization program, specifically noted the success of sterilization laws in California, documented most notably by the American eugenist P.B. Pocono. It is important to always remember that reproductive rights are essential. When we allow governments to take control of the reproductive decisions for its people, historically those governments have chosen to commit atrocities with that degree of power. And America was among the governments committing these atrocities. Thus, I cannot see the overturning of Roe versus Wade as being limited to just abortion rights. So, no. Those of us who have a uterus cannot just move to another state to regain the essential rights that were stolen from us when Roe versus Wade was overturned. And no, this does not impact just a small group of people. This impacts every American, every person living in the United States, whether they have a uterus or not, because it affects your ability to maintain your right for body autonomy, for medical autonomy, for your right to choose what happens to your body. And that's an important right to maintain. So that's about all I'm going to say about this topic. I think I've pretty much covered the important pieces here. If you like the video, please hit the like button. It really does help. And until we can talk and hang out again, you guys please take care of yourselves. Bye!